Welcome to Mission Majjhima, Ajahn.
Ajahn.
So tell us about the Mahāsāropama Sutta, Majjhima number 29.
So the greater discourse on the simile of the Heartwood is a sutta that takes place after Devadatta had left. And Devadatta is a character we'll encounter through the canon. He was the Buddha's cousin and became jealous of the Buddha and not only tried to murder him, but also tried to create schism in the Sangha and wrest power. So this discourse seems to take place either right after those events or somewhere near them. And his kind of plots seem to be the catalyst for this discourse and the admonition given by the Buddha in it. So in the discourse, the Buddha uses the simile of a tree and the layers of wood to speak to the different kind of layers of benefit one can expect from the holy life and the danger of stopping halfway or partway before achieving the pith or the heartwood of the holy life, in this case, unshakable liberation. So he begins by saying there's the case where someone goes forth out of faith and achieves gain, honor, and praise, labha sakara siloka, and becomes satisfied with that gain, honor, and praise, intoxicated by it, and falls into heedlessness. It disparages others and exalts himself based on it as well. And basically stops without achieving the full heart of the holy life. And he compares this to a person in search of heartwood, mistaking the twigs and leaves of a tree for the heartwood and carrying those off instead of keeping on going until they reach the heartwood. The Buddha then uses this same kind of pattern for speaking about one who similarly goes forth, achieves gain, honor, and praise, but does not become heedless based on that, and moves on to achieve consummation in virtue. So just bringing their virtue into basically perfection, and becomes satisfied with this, even though they weren't satisfied with gain, honor, and praise, and falls into heedlessness. This is like someone, he says, who takes the outer bark of a tree after passing over the twigs and leaves and considers that the heartwood. Then there's someone who doesn't rest satisfied with either gain, honor, and praise or virtue, but mistakes consummation in concentration for the heartwood. And that's, he compares to someone who takes the inner bark of a tree and carries that off thinking it's heartwood. Then someone who mistakes knowledge and vision for the heartwood, and that is, or for the heart of the holy life, and that being the sapwood of a tree surrounding the heartwood. And importantly there, knowledge and vision is used alone as a compound rather than yatabhutang jnanadasanang, which is a different term you encounter, which means knowledge and visions of things as they are. And that term always connotes stream entry, at least, of the Four Noble Truths. So this term itself seems to imply other things, including perhaps psychic powers, etc., but not necessarily enlightenment. And then finally, the Buddha says there is the case where one does not rest satisfied with achieving gain, honor, and praise, virtue, concentration, or knowledge and vision, but achieves unshakable liberation, or rather continual freedom, asamaya vimokkha. And that is the heartwood of the holy life. And he says, basically that this is how one does not stop at half measures before achieving the aim of this form of life. So, Ajahn, what would you like to draw out of this sutta?
First is just to look at that term, gain, honor, and praise. It's something which appears in many different contexts and really with a lot of suspicion and hesitancy, and really encouraging restraint and heedfulness around gain, honor, and praise. There's a whole Samyutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha, where the Buddha gives these very graphic similes of the danger of gain, honor, and praise, saying that gain, honor, and praise are like a baited hook, a corded harpoon, a briar patch's effect on the long-haired she-goat, dung unto a dung beetle, a thunderbolt, a dart, mange unto an old jackal, gale winds unto a bird, a taut horsehair rope that would cut through the skin down to the bone marrow, or like bile sprinkled over the nose of a wild dog that makes it even more wild. So real encouragement. And the Buddha in each of these suttas says, therefore you should train yourselves. We will be ones who abandon arisen gain, honor, and praise, and will not allow arisen gain, honor, and praise to persist affecting the mind. So it is something that you encounter, like as it's been happening since the time of the Buddha in many different spiritual circles as well. It's like when someone is purifying the heart, growing in virtue or samadhi, making the mind bright, it attracts a lot of brightness. And oftentimes people will want to support someone that's living like that. And then this gain accrues to the person. And so even from the earliest times of the Buddha, Devadatta was someone who, did achieve all this gain, honor, and praise because he had some degree of psychic power. People were, quote unquote, bringing like 500 carts of food every day to Devadatta. So many people these days will come and visit a theravada monastery and think that the monks are, deprived of food and not having much food, and will be very surprised at the seeming opulence, the tons of great food that, are a daily feature at many Theravada monasteries, certainly in Thailand. But it happened at the time of the Buddha, and just what we have to do in response to that is just be wary ourselves, train ourselves to not be affected by that. And for yourself, Ajahn, anything else that you'd like to draw out?
Some of the language the Buddha uses about a practitioner becoming heedless and intoxicated with each of these shallower goals of the holy life is precise and intentional and important. So one is that in each case, one who, say, becomes satisfied or intoxicated with gain, honor, and praise, virtue, concentration, exalts themselves and disparages others. Mm-hmm. And this is an interesting kind of metric. I mean, we've all seen this in ourselves. Pride is in us. But there's an interesting in the called the Vimamsaka Sutta, the Inquirer, where the Buddha talks about how you investigate whether a teacher is being restrained through fear or through lack of fear. Basically, whether this part, their virtue and restraint is kind of implicit in their heart, or if it's kind of a bit more artificial. And one way he says you can tell that is if they exalt themselves and disparage others based on that. That's how you know it's from fear. And I really find that's true. It's like when these qualities are new, when we're still getting to get used to them, there is this impulse to constantly compare and almost define ourselves by what we're not. And you see that impulse to exalt yourself and disparage others. So I find it really interesting to see him point to that pattern in these lower levels of kind of attainment. What about you, Ajahn? Anything else you'd like to bring out?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point about the comparison. It comes up in this sutta when one exalts oneself and disparages others. And I think this is a unique aspect of Buddhist morality, that one, to be truly a Buddhist morality, it's not just that you refrain from harming others, it's that you don't exalt yourself and disparage others on the count of that. If you're someone who's harmless, but you're lifting yourself up and looking down on others, that's not a Buddhist morality. This is part and parcel of that. So really being careful. And you do see it in monasteries when people are trying to refine their conduct of body, speech, and mind. And even on the level of mind, or maybe even more so, like people, when they get a degree of samadhi, will start to look down on others. And if you don't see that in yourself, and it's easy to miss if you don't have it foregrounded, then it can really cause a lot of trouble for yourself and others. Something else I wanted to highlight is just there is a passage in here which occurs 10 times in this sutta, and about 20 or 30 times in the rest of the canon, where the Buddha is talking about how one aspires to a holy life, and it comes up in our chanting, in our Amaravati Abhayagiri chanting books. That's Otina Manjatiya Jara Maranena. All of us are bound by birth, aging, and death, by sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Then it goes on, bound by dukkha and obstructed by dukkha. Let us all aspire to complete freedom from suffering. We chant that every day in our monasteries, and much of our chanting that we do in our chanting books, and this is the same, even if it's not the exact same chanting book, in different cultures, different monasteries, different countries. So much of it does come from these pericope, these stock phrases that occur again and again in the canon. So just pointing to that relationship, we're kind of grooving our hearts with these patterns that the Buddha set forth. So saying things which the Buddha, if he didn't say verbatim these exact lines, he said something very close. So. Well, Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
It is pamada, which means intoxicated, and it comes from the root mad, which means intoxicated.